Disaster Risk Reduction 2024. I'm Daphne Oseña-Paez here in Manila, Philippines, and I am joined by Mr. Anil Pokhrel. He is the appointed as the first Chief Executive of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority of Nepal under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Good afternoon, sir, and thank you for making time for us.
Good afternoon, Daphne. Thanks for hosting me.
Okay, and I know that you're in a hurry. You're about to fly back to Nepal, and you were here for a few days. Would you like to tell us about the when the Sendai Gap was launched in March last year, or this year? Nepal already endorsed a new Gender Equality and Disability and Social Inclusion Strategic Action Plan in disaster risk reduction. It already integrates the Sendai Gap. Please share with us your motivation in developing it just after the release and the process, of course, of how you included stakeholders and undertaken by your institution.
It's so interesting that the Gender Action Plan, while it was being written, the government of Nepal had initiated a process to write this gender, social inclusion, and the disability inclusion strategy. And so it's come out also at nearly at the same time. We've also learned from the gap assessment as well. And so what we've done is, for the first time, we've looked into all the 4 priority pillars of the Sendai Framework, and we looked at again how particularly we could integrate GEDSI considerations. The gender and the social inclusion has been there, and Nepal has been one of 4 runners, especially in terms of really looking at political representation, the voices and the choices of women in particular, and also in social inclusion. What we felt was disasters creates disabilities. They also hit hard when there's an earthquake, when there's a flood, when there's a landslides. It's so difficult for them to really save themselves. So this particular element was really missing. And so, similar to the gap assessment, what we saw is the need for really integrating GEDSI considerations into all the 4 priority pillars. This was not easy to be done. So we ourselves had a very limited capacity within the office. Our NDRRMC counterpart in Nepal, we call it NDRRMA. So this office, my office, take the lead jointly with Ministry of Women, but also other relevant ministries and departments, a lot of experts into the team as well. We then charted out a thorough consultation process, a shared learning dialogue between various set of civil society actors, not only in Kathmandu, the capital city. We went down to provinces, to municipalities, had rounds of, again, consultations with various set of stakeholders. That led us to the drafting of this National GEDSI Strategy Action Plan. I'm also happy to say that this was endorsed in May. We got the English translated version right here before the launch of the marketplace. This was also unveiled by our Secretary General, Mr. Kamal Kishore, on the Nepal booth, and so it's out public. It's in English as well. So we're really happy and happy that again we've been recognized for this work along the sidelines of the gap assessment.
What are the key points of the GEDSI plan, just in a nutshell, just so the others can learn from how fast and how effective you were in bringing out this plan?
So if you look at the 4 priority pillars, let's start by an example of the understanding risk. Risk assessments are usually not human-centric, in generally speaking. They really tend to leave apart the human dimensions of it, regardless of whether there's a woman, there's an elderly woman, there's a single mother, there's a mother who's going through maternity periods, or somebody's husband is out in the Middle East for labor migration. There's different set of vulnerabilities associated with that. So these dimensions, the vulnerability of a person with disability, is not captured by a regular conventional risk assessment. And so what we're trying to do here is disaggregate data down to a household level through a national system whereby municipal governments contribute to that data sets. We then jointly with relevant ministries and agencies like Philolix, we use that to churn out those into risk assessments, which will be used for early warning systems. So now a person's not speaking a mainstream language would then be able to target in that particular language. In our country, we speak more than 100 languages in different parts of the countries. So designing our messaging, designing our alerts gaps would then be based on the choice of the language itself. For different kind of disabilities, persons with disabilities, somebody can't read, somebody can't hear. So how do you design? How do you use the power of AI? How do you use the power of technology? That's then we could design it for that particular household or for that particular person. This way of looking at of the considerations of gender, considerations of disabilities wasn't there until this National Strategy Action Plan came out. What we've done is we've categorized those 4 pillars, mainly around 8 priority strategic areas, and this looks into, it has identified 46 strategy action plans. From all the way from data collections to something as a longer term plan such as SOC response or social protection. So these 46 action plans would be monitored over time by a committee set up within the National Disaster Reduction and Management Authority, but we aim to again localize it at the provincial and also at the local level.
Okay, of course, the purpose of all these plans are to be prepared, to act right away. And speaking of which, I know that recently there have been devastating floods and landslides in Kathmandu, and I assume that you mentioned the reason that you're going back quickly. What are the pressing needs that still have to be addressed, and what are your realizations from this unprecedented disaster?
So hell broke on those 3 days. We'd never experienced such an amount of rainfall happening in these mountains. This generally said, especially through the scientific communities, that the mountains would experience much larger climate change impacts. And it would take time for them. We'd realize it in another 10, 20, 30 years. What Nepal is already experiencing that. Like Philippines, again, a lot of typhoons are coming in, and it's attributed to climate change. The same is the situation with countries like Nepal, especially the mountains. And so we received an unprecedented amount of rainfall, something as big as 350 millimeters of rain overnight. That really moved the mountains. There's debris flow, and that's wiped out all the communities, schools, bridges, more than 40 bridges, and the losses is more than $500 million. These are very initial estimates. Now, the challenge for us is, again, resettling these families, these settlements into a safer locations. These are the same areas that were hit hard by the 2015 earthquake. Now, we need to really rethink, again, where do we settle these families? We've lost nearly 267 people. And so this is at a situation where we've just finished the immediate relief and response period. We're now about to chart out a rehabilitation and a reconstruction recovery program. This is quite a bit of a challenge for us, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going back right away without even completing the official closing ceremony of this event. But in addition to that, again, what we've also learned is there's so much to be done, especially around early warning systems. We knew this system was coming at least 3 days in advance. We've sent out alerts, we've sent out commands to stop the vehicular traffic, but also to take some precautionary measures. That still wasn't enough. We didn't have some enforcing mechanisms as such. So what we realized is having alerts at least 3 days or 5 days in advance is just not enough. We need to use the power of communications, media, and general awareness raising so that these communities, these sectors such as the transport sector, do act on time so that such kind of large-scale disasters don't happen. So there's quite a huge interest and the need for investing into early warning systems that covers all kind of hazards, floods, landslides, lightning, forest fires, even earthquakes. So that's what we've really learned from the current disasters.
Okay, and looking forward, of course, some of the themes here in this conference was building back better, using technology, and just making communities safer. Are you already thinking that far in advance?
Nepal has been a showcase for quite a successful reconstruction and recovery program. We built around 900,000 private homes after the 2015 earthquake. These were owner-driven based, owner-led construction. These were built back better. But now what we're also looking at is we also need to build in safer locations where there aren't any flood risks. There are no other landslide risk. Perhaps that's an area that we could still learn from these two disasters. And so the challenge for us is to, again, find safer locations where we could have these families integrated into a settlement as such. So it's a big task for us. So how do you build back better in safer locations so that these settlements are not going to be wiped out in another disasters in another 5 years or 10 years time?
And of course, part now of your mission, of course, is also adapting the GEDSI in action. Are there foreseen issues that you're seeing in this unprecedented disaster?
Absolutely, and so the guidelines that we're coming up, especially when it comes to this reconstruction, our strategy action plan that I mentioned earlier does have specific areas for reconstruction and recovery as well. So when you are constructing or reconstructing a new house for a family that has persons with disabilities, we then need to help them design as per the needs of the person with disability living in that houses. We can't go and again retrofit that house for that person's disabilities needs. So it's also an opportunity for us to really integrate the GEDSI action, GEDSI strategy actions when we're doing the reconstruction and recovery side of things.
Okay. As Chief Executive of Nepal's NDRRMA, what are your aspirations or ambitions to enhance disaster risk reduction in Nepal?
What we see is our risks are already high compared to a lot of other countries in the Asia Pacific region. These risks are compounded even more by climate change. The kind of signature events that we've seen this year are clearly attributable to climate change impacts. So this is something that we cannot address it alone. We need the global community, especially the donors, to help us, with financial resources that's tangible, that's substantial, and we could have direct access to it. Without finances, we can't do it. But finances itself is not alone. There's a capacity gap and an institutional capacity gap. This is where we'd like to, again, reach out through UNDRR to really call for action, especially in building capacities and institutions in countries like high-risk countries that are affected both by disasters and climate change. That's the major issue that we will be confronting here within the UNDRR's APMCDRR, but also running up to the COP29 in Baku. That's a clear area of action for all of us, especially for high-risk countries, mountain countries like Nepal. But having said that, we also need clear priority areas. The reconstruction work that we just discussed about is one clear area where we could also take a pathway where it's more green, climate resilient pathways. We could also look at integrating the GEDSI consideration into the reconstruction and recovery. Our public schools could be more friendlier to children, to be more friendlier to children with disabilities, to friendlier to girl children. And so that's how we could really inbuilt into the design itself. We are at a massive financial crunch, and so this is where leaning towards the donors for additional financing is one thing, but we also need investments in areas such as early warning systems, SOC responsible social protection, anticipatory action, and also localizing some of these DRRM concepts at the local level.
Before I let you go, you're about to leave. What's your main takeaway from the conference on disaster risk reduction so far?
What we've seen is we're not alone. The whole global community is supporting us. They are behind us. What they've said in various bilateral and meetings over here is this is an area that perhaps cannot be addressed alone by countries like Nepal alone. This does require transboundary collaboration and cooperation and a global community to act for. This is what I take away from this APMCDRR happening in Manila, in this beautiful part of the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time, and I wish you well. Thank you, Mr. Anil Pokhrel.
Thank you so much.
And this concludes our conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you.